You know, there's such a thing as too much ugly. I think on occasion, Garuda looks a little bit like a yard sale. Let me show you what I mean. I actually couldn't resist it. I had to clean a little before I even started filming. So here's some fenders I have just up on the deck. You can see just how lovely all of our canvas and bimini are. Got a deck cushion sitting up here, paddle board, you know. But if this just doesn't say it all, here's an unused appliance I have sitting out on the deck. And where should this be? In my dock box, except my dock box instead is filled with engine and maintenance components, which should be in my lazarette, except my lazarette's not exactly ready. This is a wood panel I've taken out that went right here next to the engine, and it's trying to get cleaned. I thought about repainting it. It's not looking too bad, but it needs a shelf in order to store things, which have found a home either right here or up on the dock, along with all the extra paints and supplies and epoxies that I keep in this bin next to the companionway. So here's the thing, it's time for Garuda to be a little less ugly. My thinking is I'll mentally feel better if I just stop living around some of this clutter. So here's my plan. This is going to take a couple of episodes, unfortunately. I think I hinted at that in the last one, because there's a lot of projects that are kind of spread throughout the boat. But what it's going to begin with is some type of order of operations. Here's what's on my mind. I'd really like to get lazarettes done, put fiberglass probably in a shelf or something to make the bottoms level so that I can build storage system for supplies for the engine. In order to do that, however, I need to get the top deck here in the cockpit clean. So I'm going to start with the woodwork that surrounds the cockpit because that's in the worst shape. And the idea would be to clean some of that woodwork up, re-caulk, re-varnish, get the cockpit kind of in order. And as long as I'm doing woodwork, there's a couple of areas on the boat that are really bothering me. The doorway, for example, to the v-berth does not close. That door will not close. There is water damage down low. And I really need to address that. I've got a hole or a broken piece in the rub rail on the side of Garuda, and so if I'm going to do some woodwork, that would be kind of on my mind. There was also a filigree piece that sat on the back of the boat that I really wouldn't mind kind of putting back in place. It's something I look at every time I get on and off the boat, and it's just kind of a reminder. So this episode, as painful as it might be to watch varnish dry, I think this is going to be we'll begin with all things woodwork and we'll carry it from there. We spent decades chasing the American dream, only to realize that working more to have more wasn't exactly the dream we expected to be living. Together, we walked away from it all to rediscover what's really necessary to live a rewarding life. Inspired by other YouTubers, we bought a fixer-upper sailboat in the hopes of discovering the world anew, just as soon as we learned to sail. The project I'd like to take on today is actually here inside. It's a little cold out. I got my hat on. I may have to get outside and work in the sun, but I'm going to show you something that's kind of bothering me. It's not a huge area, but we've taken a little water damage near the head, and the worst of it you can see right here in the door frame. But it also extends down to the finish here in the companionway, and I've got even a little bit of floor damage from that as well. The very worst is actually around the corner here. You can see the discoloration of the floor pretty bad. Probably can't do too much about that, but can you see the water damage? Yeah, there you go, along the base. That project I'll probably cut out on another day, but what I want to work on is this door frame. So one issue is, it's going to get a little dark, the door itself won't close. So that water has swollen up. That water's just swollen up the door frame. Do a little maybe sanding on the door. I don't know. We'll see kind of what we can get into. But I found a couple of pieces of trim here in the yard. Luckily, you know, the dozens of boats that have come before me have left little pieces of teak around. And yesterday while I was dropping stuff off at the consignment store, I went through a teak bin and found a couple little small pieces they just let me have. So anyway, I'm going to kind of maybe work on fitting that in today. Alright, this is one of the pieces of trim I found, and I could probably do this faster with a speed square, but what I've done is just marked an inch, made a 45-degree line on it. Hopefully you can see that okay there. And we'll cut that as our splice into the door frame. Alright, well I just set the smoke detector off. You can probably see some smoke still in that beam of sunlight, but what I did is I just kind of cut a quick notch here. I'm going to try to get the rest out with a chisel. I'm going to be a little careful about what we leave behind. Oh man, have I made a mess, huh? But at least I got the piece of trim out. Now we're going to kind of get things fit. So we're continuing with the door frame. This is our new piece. As it sits in, we're going to want to put 2 screws. We'll glue it back to the wall, but I'm going to put 2 finished screws in here to hold it. And to do that, I want to pre-drill them, and I also want to countersink it a little bit so that we can put a wood plug in it when we're done, because this is pretty visible and finished carpentry needs to look nice. It's working. Alright, so got a little sanded on the edge here to make this smooth. Also cleaned up the frame. I've wiped everything down with some acetone. A little close up on the repair. I've actually used a little bit of that dark caulk just to make sure I don't have any light that's coming through. There was a small gap there once it was trimmed. So let's get some varnish on it and see how this looks. Here we are in the finished companionway. You can see the door repair in the frame, and then we've also added this piece of trim down low in order to hide that previous water damage. Can't do much about the floor, but you can at least see the difference with new varnish up. Looking at the wood in the cockpit, so let me show you what we're up against here. You could probably think of this as the before. This is just like a cockpit combing, I guess. I'm not exactly certain what it's called, but look, you can see where some of it's worn. You can see where some of this is chipped. What I'm really concerned with is the state of like caulking, because that lets water penetrate and get inside. Of course, we got the same problem going on out here on our cap rail. Here you can see it at the stern, and actually, let me get my foot in here. This is what the back. This would be like the before. This is more the after. So you can see the side I've actually already worked on compared to the old. And we got a few repairs to make. Got the little chip here. I don't know if you can see this. This had like kind of a little bit of a filigree, like a kind of a finish work on it. So clearly got to clean up where all of these are rubbing. Looks like we have a little caulk in the corner. Anyway, Garuda's a little bit of a mess. Let's see if we can't get her cleaned up. So I'm just going to kind of start things off with the trusty old putty knife. I'm trying to, that varnish comes off actually not too bad just with the knife. I'm trying to avoid using the sander too much. I really don't want to take too much of the wood off. It's already worn. There goes some bubbles right there. It's already worn pretty good, and I just don't want to lose much wood, so we're going to see if we can extend the life of this. The main thing is, other than getting the varnish off, is going to be removing that caulk. So To show you some of the area, you can see this just comes right off here. But as we follow along this caulk line, this is actually moisture that's building up in the wood. So that's what we're trying to avoid. I don't know if you can see some of that here. The rest is just a matter of getting the knife kind of underneath there, but we're gonna have to let those areas dry out. Alright, I got most of this scraped. It actually rained last night, which was kind of handy. Help clean this off. You can see, let's take a little sandpaper to this. We'll take off what's left. Try to get this kind of clean. I got a little more to scrape up front. Just didn't remove any hardware yet. Here is the first pass with 100 grit sandpaper. Got to go back with 220 now. Alright, time to remove the caulk. We're using two tools for that. Just an everyday scraper with a pointy end to get in there. And then Teak Systems actually makes a caulk removing tool, which works pretty good. Maybe you can see this though, but it doesn't kind of get into all areas of the boat. Works in some spots, doesn't work in other spots. But I think that's just because of the age of the boat. So anyway, a combination of both of those. Let's get all the caulk out. So I'm caulking it up with this Teak Systems 440. This worked really good for me before. There's like two ways to do this. The official way is you kind of tape off each side of the area that you're caulking, and then be able to kind of caulk and smudge, if you will, and then you know, come back with it. But what I found is this 440 sands really well. So all I'm going to do is kind of fill it and do the smudge, and then I'll sand it off. Alright, I've got this a little bit cleaned up. I've done a first pass with 100 grit sandpaper just to take off kind of the wide track, so you can kind of see now our grout lines back in the teak, but it's still a little rough. So I'm going to go over it with 220, and there's going to be some areas I can't get to, which I'll try to show you here. There's some areas I can't get to with the sander, so I'm going to have to go back and clean some of that up by hand. Alright, so we're returning back, and had to take a little break while you were charging. But in any case, we were able to kind of sand everything down, get everything smooth, got our first coat of varnish on. So today we're going to rough it up a little bit and put a second coat on. We're going to have to go through that like 6 or 7 times in order to build this up. But you know, beginning to at least kind of see it clean. It's going to get a little smoother, get a little shinier as we go. So sand it a little, gonna wipe down with a little acetone just to clean it up some. It always feels strange to paint and then sand what you just did. It's like I'm screwing up what I just painted, but anyway, got a lot of coats of this coming. here's the after shot. See how much nicer this looks. Good clean caulk line. Here's this repair made. And then this was the filigree piece I was talking about. I just kind of eyeballed that, cut that by hand in order to put it into place. It's screwed on. We got two plugs kind of on the side, but you can see the after. All right, a little different view this morning. Oh, right into the sun. But we're on the side of the boat, if you can't tell. Looking at the cap rail and also this rub rail. And I'll tell you what we're headed for is this spot right here, which is damaged. So a good part of this job is kind of evaluation. This is the first time we've really been down here looking at it, and I want to get an idea of what it's going to take. Definitely going to need some caulk. Then we're going to start by taking this rail off and just kind of looking at the condition of this teak. Here's a little update on our progress so far. We've taken the that metal cap rail off, and you can kind of see the damage that we're dealing with. And we got a little bit sanded. Got it cut clean, sanded a little, and then let me pull myself over. Went over to the workbench, and I have made a piece to splice in here. Kind of see the whole thing. Even drilled a few holes. So what we're going to do is put some wood glue on that and screw it down, get it into place. Alright, so here's an update. It's been, what, 3 days now on the cap rail. And that's the repair so far on the rub rail. All the way down. Got the boys in cleaning the bottom. So this is a bit of a first pass so that you can see it. We'll have to come back with some 220 and clean this up. So two things I was thinking about while I was putting that second coat on. The first is, I don't actually know if I need to varnish underneath. My thinking was, you can leave a comment and tell me what you think, because I'm definitely using, you know, expensive varnish, I guess. But here's my thought is, it's got to offer some type of UV protection. Maybe I'm making too much out of nothing, but I figure you've got, you know, it's going to, when I heel over, be in the water, so it's definitely going to be touching the water. And I've got a bunch of sun exposure off of the water, so it just seems like it would be a good idea. I don't know if that's actually visible or not, but still, you know, out of some caution, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Because, you know, what's more work while you're in the middle of a wood project? Second thing is this. I know I can already sense the comments coming about why did you pay somebody to scrape the bottom of your boat instead of doing it yourself. You know what? You are totally right. I could get in the water and do that myself, but sometimes it's just nice to have another set of hands helping with a project. So a little bit of luxury. They actually were going through the marine and cleaning other boats, so it wasn't really that much to have them just get on and do a quick scrub. Next time, you and me, we'll be scraping it together. So we're putting the metal rail on now. You can kind of see it going back down the boat. I can move the dock line. So I've got it sitting right up here. I've sanded it up, kind of ready to go. It's just a matter of attaching it to the back of the rail. We now have 5 coats of varnish on the rub rail. It's time to get a little caulking on it. We'll seal it up right to the hull, and then we'll be finished with this project. Ooh, lots of visitors this morning. So with the port side rub rail already done, we have moved over to the starboard side to do the exact same thing with its rub rail. Put together pretty much the same way. Didn't have any breaks in the wood. Do have a few kinks in the metal guard, I guess, if you will. So we're going to try to straighten some of those out and clean them up. But before we do that, we've removed all the caulk, removed all of the paint, or the varnish rather, and so now it's time to re-varnish the new, newly kind of scraped back rub rail. But since we were already on that side, before we did any refinishing, I went ahead and started working on the cap rail. So we've done the cap rail most of the way around. Let me show you kind of where we currently stand. So this is a good example where we've done our best to remove the caulk that was here on top of the rub rail, including any spacing where it runs into the deck. Of course, we've scraped this back primarily with the blade again, but we've also done a little bit of sanding in order to even this out. So now it is time to start approaching the caulk. We run like a bead of caulk all the way down the cap rail and then smoothed it out. Now we'll come back through and sand it even, and we'll be ready to varnish. Look how pretty Garuda looks now. She's starting to look loved. Anyway, hope you enjoyed watching the transformation this week. If you did, make sure you give us a like. It really does help us out. And if you want to keep up with all the changes we're making, then consider subscribing. Well, with all the woodwork done, it's probably time to move on to the lazarette and finally getting this cockpit cleaned up. Thanks for watching this episode. We'll see you again real soon.